In a world where the dead don't rest and monsters crawl out of cursed scales, one boy carries the weight of a dragon's broken soul. His name is Woosa, a monster hunter who is himself a monster. A fragment of an ancient serpent lives inside him, growing stronger with every battle, clawing at his humanity, threatening to consume everything he is. As a Death Lord rises from the shadows, corrupted warriors hunt the 9 scattered scales, and the line between human and beast blurs beyond recognition. Woosa must gather what was never meant for one person to hold. But the closer he gets to power, the more the dragon inside him takes control.
A serpent once rose into the sky, desperate to claim its place as a dragon. That transformation was supposed to be the god's ultimate gift, a reward for centuries of sacrifice on behalf of humankind. But the gods denied it. Imagine that betrayal. The serpent's rage boiled over, and in its fury, it set its own body ablaze. Flesh and bone turned to ash, but the 9 spirits inside refused to burn. Instead, they seeped into its scales, scattering across the land. And those scales? Any creature that touched them twisted into a monster. Fast forward. Time drifts, and now we're deep in Baekdu Forest, right at the edge of the Baekdu mountain range. Soldiers gather, tense and ready, facing a creature born from one of those cursed scales. Some of them still think monsters are just rumors. Poor guy, he's about to learn the hard way. The general halts the squad, barking orders to form up. Nearby, we meet our main character, Woosa, and his buddy Bao. Bao's a big dude, but nerves are eating at him. He's worried they'll get lost in this endless forest. Woosa, though, he's buzzing with excitement. Woosa himself carries one of those serpent scales inside his body. Bao even asks if that makes Woosa a monster too. Spoiler alert, yeah, he is. You'll see soon enough. Woosa's scale gives him a 6th sense. He can feel monsters before they appear. He knows they don't have much time. If they want the reward, they've got to reach the beast first. But Woosa's calm, almost cocky. He's certain the army won't stand a chance against what's coming. And then it hits. His body reacts violently, his arms shifting, revealing their monstrous form. That's the signal. The monster has arrived. From beneath the earth, a massive creature erupts. It's enormous, furious, and the roar it lets out shakes the ground. One soldier barely has time to scream before the monster snatches him up and crushes his skull like it's nothing. The rest freeze in horror. The general snaps them back, shouting for an attack. But this thing? It's a nightmare. A mouth wide enough to swallow anything whole, claws sharp enough to shred steel, strength that sends men flying like rag dolls. It's a yacha, a fiend dragged straight out of the land of the dead. The soldiers charge, but they're hopelessly outmatched. The general, refusing to let morale collapse, rallies them. He orders the shield wall forward, then uses their raised shields as a springboard, leaping high and driving his axe into the yacha's shoulder. He lands, slashing its leg to stagger it. The soldiers swarm, stabbing wildly, but the yacha barely flinches. It retaliates with brutal swipes, cutting them down without mercy. One soldier begs for a retreat. The general hesitates, silent, torn between pride and survival. But the yacha isn't waiting. Finally, another soldier takes charge, ordering a retreat. The front line holds the beast off while the rear secures the escape route. And just then, Woosa and Bao step into the chaos. The soldiers shove them aside, too panicked to care about introductions. Woosa scoffs at their so-called bravery. To him, these men are wasting their lives pretending they can fight something they clearly can't. And right on cue, the yacha lunges straight at Woosa, claws ready to rip Woosa apart. Now, the smart move here would be to dodge, right? But our boy doesn't even flinch. He literally just stands there, aura farming like it's a casual day at the office. The monster itself looks confused, like, wait, is this kid serious? That's the funny part, the beast is shocked too. And then snap. Those claws get shredded into pieces before Woosa even moves. That's when he decides to stop playing around. He clenches his fist, and from it, a sword materializes. The yacha swings again, but Woosa dodges clean and drives the blade straight into its fist. What follows is a storm of slashes, left, right, relentless. The giant beast is carved into chunks of meat by a boy barely 150 centimeters tall. What a sight. Still, Woosa isn't satisfied. He's searching for one of the serpent's scales inside the monster, and it's not there. All that effort, and nothing to show for it. Next morning, we're at the Nocta government office in Baekdu Mountain. Woosa and Bao drag in one of the yacha's fingers as proof. The officials are stunned. How could this kid take down something that massive? Woosa, ever humble, just asks for his reward. But the payout was pathetic. It's not even enough to cover the interest they owe Mr. Kim. Bao's armor isn't fully paid off either. Bao fumes, demanding Woosa use his power to scare off their creditors. But Woosa refuses. Why? Because Monk Dalcha warned him. If he uses his powers against humans for selfish reasons, dragons, he risks becoming a true monster. And Woosa's already walking that fine line. He fought hard to control his power. He's not about to throw it away. As they pass Kim Chosi's house, the very man they owe money to, they spot a little girl named Susu. Rumor says she's gone mad. She's Chosi's granddaughter. Chosi himself appears, lamenting how cruel the ancestors must be to curse her with such a disease. That night, things get eerie. A voice echoes through the mountains, calling out Wumboya. Over and over, the name reverberates, reaching Woosa's home. His scales react violently to the sound. And here's the nightmare. The Yacha isn't dead. Despite being torn apart, its body begins to regenerate piece by piece, assembling itself back together. Even the finger Woosa handed to the office escapes and rejoins the monster. Once whole, the Yacha vaporizes into mist, and from it emerges a mysterious young man. Intrigued by the fact that Woosa carries one of the dragon's scales. Woosa's scales were burning inside him, practically screaming for him to chase that voice. He couldn't resist anymore, so he bolts straight back into the forest, determined to uncover what's happening. Meanwhile, back at Bao's place, two guards from the office show up, calling out for him. They're panicked. They tell Bao that the Yacha's finger, the one Woosa brought in as proof, just flew off into the sky. And now the magistrate, furious, shift back to the mysterious figure. The young man speaks with disdain, lamenting the time wasted. He mutters about the Death Lord, saying he must be waiting for flesh and bones. Then he begins an incantation, offering the remains of the soldiers slaughtered by the Yacha as tribute. Their flesh and bones become currency, extending the Yacha's life. His name is Gun, and he's not just some random sorcerer. He's made a pact with the Death Lord himself. As the ritual completes, the Yacha manifests behind him, absorbing the corpses scattered across the battlefield. But Woosa sees more than just bodies. He sees the soldiers' souls being dragged away, transported somewhere far darker. Yachas feed on flesh and bone to survive, but these souls? They're being delivered to someone else. The Yacha crosses into the land of the dead, carrying those souls to a mysterious gate, or maybe a statue, where the Death Lord waits. The Lord declares that if Cian honors their pact, he'll gain what he desires. And what's the pact? Cian must restore the Death Lord's body. In return, Cian will rule this land. Woosa's mind races. No one has ever survived his scale sword, yet this Yacha returned from death to fairy souls. He curses himself for not incinerating the fallen soldiers. No time to waste, he charges in. Just as Cian finishes his ritual, Illinois Kwang and his companions arrive. Cian is surprised, asking how they found him. Kwang smirks, saying he simply followed Cian's shadow. He offers Cian new clothes, and Cian marvels at the rumors that Il Kwang carries an extra eye. Cian is about to ask about the boy with the dragon scale, and right on cue, Woosa appears. The same boy who killed him before. Yet here Cian stands, alive and well. Cian laughs, admitting it was his first defeat, but brushing it off. What matters, he says, is that Woosa carries something he doesn't deserve, the dragon scale. That scale was never meant for him. Woosa, unshaken, promises Cian a swift death if he reveals where the souls were sent. Cian smirks, telling him not to rush. With that scale, Woosa is destined to meet the Death Lord whether he wants to or not. Cian clearly knows more about the scales than Woosa does. He explains that the 9 spirits inside the serpent's scales devour each other when they're not united. Woosa locks in. When it comes to the scales, he's dead serious. Cian presses further. One scale alone isn't enough to face the Death Lord. He even points out that Woosa struggles to control the one inside him. That's when Woosa snaps. He lunges, fist flying, but before the punch lands, one of Kwang's men steps in, blocking the strike. The moment Woosa's punch was blocked, the Yacha countered with a devastating blow, sending him crashing into the ground. But Woosa? He's not the type to stay down. He rose immediately, refusing to give in. Cian, watching with that smug grin, ordered his Yacha to teach Woosa a lesson, but made it clear, don't kill him. Keep him alive. Now Woosa's up against 3 Yacha at once. The blue one boasts about their unimaginable power, flexing like they're untouchable. Woosa fires back with sharp mockery. Congrats. You're freaks for being loyal. 2 Yacha lunge forward, claws slicing through the air. Woosa leaps, dodging midair with reflexes so sharp it looks unreal. But the green Yacha follows up, aiming to catch him mid-flight. Even then, Woosa twists, evading with impossible speed. But things get ugly. While Woosa is still airborne, Illinois Kwang's head mutates, twisting into monstrous tentacles, each lined with red eyes. Poison drips from them, venom infused by the Yacha. There's no way to dodge all of them at once. Woosa braces, blocking with his arm. But even with a dragon's scale, poison seeps in. His body can't can't withstand it bare. He crashes back to the ground. The blue yacha charges, aiming for a fatal strike. Somehow, even poisoned, Woosa dodges at the last second. But the venom takes hold immediately. His aura twists, his body stiffens, movement falters. The blue yacha slams him into the earth with brutal force. Kwang's tentacles coil around him, injecting even more poison. And then, the Death Lord manifests. Taking control of Kwang, his true form emerges, a grotesque, massive monster, desperate to reclaim his body and seize every dragon scale. He mocks Woosa, declaring that with only one scale, he's powerless. But Woosa notices something crucial. The Death Lord himself carries a dragon scale. That's the key. Anyone who isn't chosen by the dragon but still holds a scale will eventually perish. That explains why the Death Lord lost his body. He wasn't chosen. Flashback time. We see Woosa as a child. When the serpent's 9 souls scattered, one scale touched him, embedding a soul inside his body. That day, he fell gravely ill. His father carried him on his back all the way to Monk Dolch's house. His legs bled from the journey, but he never gave up. A true father. At the monk's house, Dolch barely looked at Woosa, coldly telling the father to leave. He declared Woosa already dead, that anyone touched by a scale without being chosen would die or lose their body. Even if he survived, the scale would consume him, turning him into a monster. But Woosa's father refused to abandon him, vowing to sacrifice anything to save his son. Back to the present. Now it all makes sense. Cian, in Yacha form, was calling out Wumboya. That was the Death Lord, crying out for his body. Woosa, fueled by this truth, manifests his dragon scale sword. With one decisive slash, he severs the tentacles binding him, breaking free. Before Woosa could strike back, the Death Lord slipped away, vanishing into the land of the dead. He can't fully manifest here in the mortal realm without a body, but that doesn't matter to Woosa. Poisoned and weakened, he's already made up his mind. He'll chase the Death Lord into his own domain if that's what it takes. That same night, in Nocta village on the edge of Baekta Forest, Woosa finds himself face-to-face with Park Sunyong, the magistrate and head of the government office. Park demands that Woosa retrieve the Yacha's finger, furious that it's gone. Woosa fires back, saying he delivered the finger as promised. It's the office's fault it vanished. Park doesn't care. He gives Woosa 5 days to bring it back, threatening arrest if he refuses. Turns out Park is aware that our boy is a monster. The funny part, Woosa shouts, "A monster? How could you say that to this handsome face?" The magistrate, shameless as ever, is basically dumping his dirty work on a boy. Outside, Bao waits for his friend. Woosa's exhausted, drained from sleepless nights. He reminds Bao they'll need to catch something tomorrow to pay back Kim Chosi, then urges him to head home so he can finally rest. That night, Woosa collapses into deep sleep. Bao snores beside him. But then, Woosa's hand begins to move on its own. He struggles to control it, but it twists free. A dark red eye opens on his palm. Tentacles sprout from his arm, lined with sharp teeth, and in the nightmare they lash out, killing Bao. But it's only a dream, or at least partly, because when Woosa wakes, his arms are twitching violently. He knows the truth. The monster inside him is eating away at him, little by little, and one day it will consume him completely. Still, he's determined. The only way out of this nightmare is to gather all 9 scales, each holding a fragment of the dragon's spirit. Right now, he has one. Another lies in the land of the dead. Morning comes. Bao's already outside, calling for him. They need to hunt something to pay off their debts. But Woosa's worst fear hits. The Yacha's poison still lingers, and he loses control. He opens the door, collapses, and Bao rushes in. Woosa, barely holding on, begs him to run. Bao refuses, unwilling to abandon his friend. Woosa fights to suppress the poison, buying seconds, but Bao won't leave. And then it happens. Woosa snaps. Multiple snake heads burst from his body, writhing and snapping. One lunges forward, jaws wide, ready to devour Bao. Woosa barely managed to grab one of those serpent-like heads before it could sink its teeth into Bao. If he hadn't, Bao would have been done for. But the nightmare wasn't over. 2 more heads whipped toward Bao, forcing him to dodge desperately. He scrambled for a spear, hoping to help his friend. Woosa, meanwhile, conjured his scale sword and hacked through the writhing heads. But the problem, even severed, they refused to die. Bao thrust his spear into one, only to realize normal weapons don't work against these things. As long as the poison lingers inside Woosa, more monsters will keep crawling out of him. And then it gets worse. A villager passing by catches sight of Woosa's monstrous state. Horrified, he bolts toward the center of town to alert the guards. If word spreads, Woosa's finished. Bao dashes after the man, determined to stop him before it's too late. Meanwhile, far away in the land of the dead, chaos brews. A blue Yacha and a red Yacha clash violently. The blue dominates at first, forcing the red to the ground and lunging for the kill. But the red turns the tables, snatching the blue's weapon and driving it back into him, finishing the fight. 2 imprisoned Yachas watch from nearby cells, eyes locked on the duel. Then Cian appears. He tells Kwang that this red Yacha will lead the Death Lord's army. Cian's here for him specifically. Kwang warns that the other red one has been ignoring orders, acting like like he's the Death Lord's favorite. If the Death Lord truly chooses him as successor, Xian's ambitions are over. But Xian shrugs it off, confident he won't let that happen. Xian approaches one of the yachas in the cells. The prisoner trembles as Xian manifests his own yacha form, radiating power. Xian declares there's no place for disobedience in the Death Lord's army. Then he turns to the victorious red yacha, ordering him into the cave ahead. Only the strong can pass through. Beyond that cave lies the Death Lord's army, waiting to be served with body and soul. And when the Death Lord regains his lost body and ascends to the heavens, his army will rise with him, honored with the chance to battle the armies of heaven itself. Back with Bao, he managed to catch the man before word could spread that Woosa was a monster. Bao raised his finger, focusing hard, and unleashed a hallucination technique. The man's eyes locked onto Bao's finger, and suddenly his mind was somewhere else entirely. He saw a waterfall, and right there a fairy bathing. And yup, he was fixated on her behind. That's all he could see. When Bao snapped him out of it, the man remembered nothing about Woosa's monstrous form. All he carried in his head now was the image of that fairy's behind. What a hilariously useful technique. Meanwhile, Woosa was still locked in battle against the endless monsters erupting from his poisoned body. No matter how many heads he cut down, more kept spawning. Our boy laughed bitterly at himself. What a pathetic state, unable to control his own body, let alone hunt for the scales. Just then, Susu, Chosi's granddaughter, appeared. She called out the name Wumboya, repeating it over and over. And something incredible happened. The monsters emerging from Woosa began to destroy themselves. Susu had copied the eerie voice that echoed from the mountains, and it forced the creatures into fear, unraveling them from within. But the poison wasn't gone. The root of it still lingered inside Woosa. Susu even revealed she knew about the scale within him. Woosa was stunned. How could she know? He couldn't even remember the first time they met. Flashback. The night the voice first called out Wumboya, Susu followed it, almost possessed, until she stumbled upon a massive monster writhing in pain. That monster was Woosa, losing control. To others, he looked hideous. But to Susu, he was just an animal suffering. Her hair moved on its own, stroking the monster gently, and in that moment, the beast's body was destroyed. Woosa appeared, serpent energy radiating from him. Susu saw it clearly. He carried the dragon's scale. The only reason Woosa remembers fragments of that night is because he was rampaging. Back in the present, Susu teased him. If not for her hair, he might have become a monster hunting humans, or worse, hunted himself. Woosa asked if her hair held some kind of holy power. Susu wasn't sure, but she explained her hair was another sense organ. She could feel, see, even smell with it. Creepy, huh? Woosa thought to himself how people called her crazy, but Susu read his mind instantly. That's when you realize there's something deeper between them. Susu explained she ended up here by following a ghost, a red yacha heading toward Noctu Castle. The moment Woosa heard red yacha, he was ready to go deal with it. But Susu stopped him, saying it was too late. Monk Dalcha must already be there. Shift to Noctu Castle. The red yacha arrives, the same one who's been ignoring Xian's orders. He smashes into the soldiers, sending them flying with a single strike. The carnage begins. The red yacha tore through Noctu Castle, smashing walls and ripping soldiers apart. He grabbed one wounded soldier and devoured him right there, blood dripping as the others panicked. The soldiers, tired of running, tried stabbing him, but their blades were useless. He swatted them away like flies, sending bodies crashing into stone. That's when Monk Dalcha stepped in. He raised his bow, conjuring a magic arrow, and fired. The yacha dodged, but the spell around the arrow still activated, blasting him into the air. Dalcha fired again, aiming to finish it, but the monster regained balance mid-flight and dodged the second shot. With a roar, the red yacha dashed away, escaping the scene. Dalcha stood stunned. The yachas were evolving. He immediately ordered the soldiers to burn the corpses, warning them that any body left behind would become another yacha. He stressed that the government must be informed. Every corpse must be burned, no exceptions. Back with our duo, Susu suddenly began removing her heavy clothes. Woosa was caught off guard. Wait, are we really doing this out in the open? But it wasn't what he thought. Susu explained her clothes were too heavy, making it hard to move. Woosa couldn't understand why she was helping him. Susu reminded him of Monk Dalcha's words. Their fates are tied together. Humanity's survival depends on both of them. They're in this fight side by side. Susu prepared to use her hair to extract the poison from Woosa's body. Meanwhile, Dalcha returned to Chosi's house, calmly sipping tea. Chosi asked if his daughter Susu couldn't just live a normal life. Dalcha shook his head. The yachas must be stopped, or humanity will fall. Chosi struggled to believe his daughter was connected to all this. What could a small girl possibly do? Dalcha made it clear. Susu holds abilities far greater than anyone realizes. She wasn't just involved by chance. She was chosen to save this chaotic world. According to Dalchu, the stakes couldn't be higher. If the source of this twisted phenomenon in the land of the dead isn't destroyed, humanity has no future. Plain and simple. Without Susu's power, survival is impossible. That's the harsh truth. Now, shift your eyes back to the the land of death. The Death Lord's army is already assembled, Xian and Kwang moving like shadows across the terrain. Xian thinks everything is unfolding exactly as he planned. By planting poison inside Woosa, he believes he's forced Woosa to come here, since there's no way to neutralize it outside this cursed land. What Xian doesn't realize is that Susu herself can counter it. That's the twist he never saw coming. Xian and his crew climb high, perched on a cliff where one wrong step means instant death. Ahead lies the bridge, the path to the Death Lord himself. As Xian steps forward, one of the wooden planks snaps beneath him. He almost plunges into the abyss, but he steadies himself and presses on. Across the bridge, the Death Lord waits, his spirit confined inside a monstrous statue covered in skulls. Xian bows low, pledging loyalty, declaring he only wishes to serve. The Death Lord accepts his devotion, promising that once his body is restored, Xian will rule this land as its master. But Xian has questions. Every time the Death Lord searches for his body, the voice of Wumboya echoes through the land. Xian wants answers. What is Wumboya? Was the Death Lord's soul torn from his body because of the dragon scale? And finally, we get the villain's backstory. The Death Lord wasn't born, he was made. He began as the gatekeeper of the Heaven's Northern Gate. His soul was gifted by the god of the northern sky, his body given by Wumboya, the god of land. But soul and body never fused. Chaos followed, and he was stripped of his position. Obsessed, he sought to unite them, and eventually succeeded. But in the process, he angered Moj, the god of heaven. Cast out, he hid in the land of the dead at the northern edge of the human world. There, he seized a dragon scale that had fallen, but his greed was his undoing. His soul and body split apart again. Wumboya, that's the name of the body he lost. And only the 9 dragon scales scattered across the land can restore it. Xian, drunk on the power granted to him, swears to find Wumboya for his master. The Death Lord laughs, warning Xian that today he'll witness one of those 9 scales, but he may not be the one to claim it. Another contender is here, the Red Yacha. Whoever claims the dragon's scale becomes the Death Lord's successor. And just like that, the battle ignites. The Red Yacha lunges first, swinging his massive arm. Xian dodges, weaving through every strike. Then Xian unleashes his own transformation, shifting into his Yacha form. The clash is brutal. Still, Xian is outmatched. The Red Yacha grabs him, crushing him in a deadly embrace. Xian fights back, slamming his fists into the monster's ears, stunning him for a heartbeat. He conjures blades from his fists, aiming to pierce the beast. But the Red Yacha recovers, blocks the strike with his arm, and counters with a devastating punch that sends Xian crashing into the ground. No mercy, he leaps, ready to deliver the fatal blow. Once that devastating punch landed, Xian was done. He couldn't even twitch a finger. The Red Yacha didn't stop there. He gathered even more power and slammed another blow. The ground itself shattered, dust and stone flying everywhere. Xian's body turned to ashes right before our eyes. The battle looked finished. The Red Yacha roared in triumph, declaring himself the successor of the Death Lord, basking in his supposed victory. But hold up. Just when he thought he owned the stage, the sky itself betrayed him. From above, Xian came crashing down like a meteor, blazing through the air with impossible speed. The Red Yacha couldn't even react. His head was sliced clean off in an instant. As his skull hit the ground, a brutal truth was revealed. Yachas aren't truly dead until their bodies burn to ashes. And sure enough, the Red Yacha's corpse detonated, bursting apart in a violent explosion. From the wreckage, a dragon scale emerged, glowing with raw power. Meanwhile, back with Woosa and Susu, things were tense. Susu warned him not to fight until she completely removed the poison. The treatment began. Her hair flowed into Woosa's body like living threads, searching cleansing. But the moment she touched the dragon scale inside him, she felt its monstrous energy. Woosa was barely holding on, his body trembling as the dragon's power surged. The scale reacted violently, and Susu's eyes betrayed something dangerous: greed. She wanted that scale for herself. The instant her hand reached for it, everything snapped. Woosa lost control. A pillar of energy erupted into the sky, shaking the land. Dalchu and Bao saw it from afar. Dalchu's face hardened. He knew this was spiraling out of control. He sprinted ahead, leaving Bao behind. Now, the dragon itself was in command of Woosa's body. Its will was absolute, and its warning was clear. Those who desire the scale will die. The dragon began tearing scales from its own arm, each one morphing into a weapon. One scale twisted into a massive fruit-shaped construct, glowing ominously, and it was aimed directly at Susu. Susu barely escaped. The fruit-shaped scale detonated on impact, ripping the ground apart. She staggered back, guilt heavy on her face. She knew this chaos was her fault, born from her own greed to claim the dragon's scale. But the dragon wasn't done. More scales flew at her like relentless bombs. That's when Monk Dalchu arrived. He loosed a sacred arrow, and the shot didn't pierce. It formed a barrier, shielding Susu from the explosive barrage. He kept shouting for Woosa to wake up, to fight back, but it was useless. The dragon had full control now. The beast shifted its focus. Dalchu became the target. The cliff exploded under the dragon's assault, assault, but Dalchu, trained and disciplined, held his ground. While Susu tried to explain the dire situation, the dragon twisted its scales into a long whip, snapping it toward the princess. Dalcha's warning saved her. She leapt aside just in time. The whip lashed again, Dalcha barely dodging, then once more, this time aimed at Susu. Dalcha shoved her out of harm's way, taking the strike himself. The dragon seized him, dragging him into the earth. And that's when Dalcha saw it, the third eye embedded in Woosa's palm. The dragon unleashed its true horror, serpent heads bursting forth from that eye, lunging to devour him. Dalcha cried out, warning Woosa, if the third eye takes full control, it's over. Our boy will be lost forever, transformed into a monster without return. Dalcha didn't run. He took the hit, wounded, but still clinging to faith that Woosa could resist. The serpent heads closed in, jaws wide, but Susu intervened. Her hair surged forward, binding, blocking, fighting back against the dragon's assault. She knew the only way to save him was to make Woosa remember their first meeting. Turns out, Susu's spirit and the scale inside Woosa are connected. That bond is the key. She forced her way through the chaos, and for a fleeting moment, Woosa resurfaced, regaining control. But the third eye flared, snatching it back, dragging him under once more. The dragon roared, shaping a scale into a spear. Dalcha tried desperately to stop it, but he was too late. The spear flew, piercing Susu, stabbing her on the spot. It looked like Susu was gone for good, stabbed, lifeless, the sad reality sinking in. Dalchu himself was bleeding out, barely holding on, and the dragon was preparing to finish him. But then, against all odds, Susu stirred. She wasn't dead. Her hair lashed out, suppressing the dragon's power, and unbelievably, she made the third eye vanish. The spirit inside Susu isn't just Susu, it's Princess So. And the dragon spirit inside Woosa? He knows her. Their connection runs deep. Princess So manifested, speaking directly to the dragon, promising she would always remain with him, begging him to protect Susu. As her spirit returned to Susu's body, Dalchu overheard the dragon whispering her name, Princess So, but he couldn't make sense of it. With Princess So gone, Woosa regained control of himself. Dalchu, still bleeding, turned his worry to Susu. She had been stabbed, but miraculously the wound disappeared, her body repaired as if nothing had happened. Even so, her condition was fragile. They had to act fast. Woosa carried Susu on his back, while Bao helped the injured monk along. Together, they made their way to Chosi's house. Dalcha began treatment, stabilizing Susu for now. But Chosi was distraught, seeing his granddaughter in such a state. He demanded answers. Dalchu admitted there was little he could say. This fate was Susu's alone to overcome. Chosi's anger flared. His granddaughter was dying, and all Dalcha spoke of was fate. Dalchu apologized, explaining the battle had already begun, and no one could predict its end. Their only hope rested with Woosa and Susu. Chosi pressed him. Could Susu be saved? Dalcha said yes, but only with a rare herb kept at the government office. And right now, Woosa was already there, trying to secure it without stirring trouble. Cut to Nocta government office. Magistrate Park wasn't having it. He ordered Woosa punished for failing to bring back the Yacha's finger. Our boy was chained to a table, his backside smacked over and over in public. Yup, the scene was ridiculous, almost comical, lol. But Park didn't let him explain. Woosa shouted he'd hunt down the monsters for Park, but demanded the herb in return. Park grew furious, claiming Woosa still didn't understand, and ordered the guards to hit him harder. Each strike pushed Woosa closer to losing control. The dragon stirred inside him, ready to break free. And this time, Susu wasn't there to calm him. If the dragon took over now, it would be the end. Woosa clenched his teeth, knowing he had to endure, to suppress the dragon no matter the pain. He had to stay in control, because Susu's life depended on it. Our boy held on barely. After all that punishment, he managed to calm the dragon inside him. Close call, but he pulled it off. Still, his backside was getting wrecked. LOL, the smacks didn't stop. Finally, Park decided to give him another chance. Park laid it out. The government doesn't even believe these monsters are real, and if he can't provide proof, he'll be the one blamed for all the chaos. Woosa swore he'd bring proof of the monsters, but first demanded the herb. Time passed, and he returned to Chosi's house, herb in hand. Dalcha used it for Susu's treatment, and after drinking the medicine, she'd be fine once she rested. And despite the beating, our boy looked cooler than ever walking back in, lol. Now let's shift the lens to Cian. Last time, he claimed a dragon scale. Now his hair has turned white, and he's enduring the agony of consuming it, fighting to keep himself from becoming a full monster. The scale he absorbed contained the lion spirit. Outside, the blue Yacha stood guard at the entrance, letting no one approach Cian. That's when Kwang showed up. He asked the Yacha if he was loyal or just foolish. You can tell this guy is scheming. Kwang pointed out how everyone desires the scale, yet the blue Yacha just stands there, guarding it without claiming it. With Cian vulnerable, Kwang saw his chance. He wanted to strike and steal the dragon scale for himself. Greedy traitor monk, huh? But the blue Yacha refused to betray his master. Kwang attacked from behind, stabbing his tentacles into the Yacha's back, injecting poison. A filthy backstab. The Yacha fought back, cutting the tentacles, but Kwang was ready. He tore off part of his own flesh, twisting it into a rope, and wrapped it around the Yacha's neck. With brute force, he pulled until the thread sliced through, severing the Yacha's head. With the guard gone, Kwang entered the building. But the moment he opened the door, the tiger spirit lunged, smashing him into the dust. Cian had done it. He successfully tamed the dragon scale. Now he wielded both the Death Lord's power and the lion spirit's might. Now the bastard dropped to his knees, begging for mercy, swearing he'd never betray Cian again. And honestly, if it were me, I'd have ended him right there. No second chances. But Cian saw it differently. To him, the blue Yacha died because he was weak, and weak allies are useless. Kwang, on the other hand, still had value. Cian learned that the Yachas had entered a dormant state, the final step before becoming the ultimate army. With that knowledge, he set his sights on Woosa. Cian wanted his scale, and he tasked Kwang with hunting down the rest. That's the only reason he spared this traitor, utility. Now let's swing back to our boy. Woosa ventured deeper into the mountains, and thanks to the dragon taking control earlier, he unlocked a new technique. He could now unleash his scales as weapons, just like the dragon did. He tested it, dropped one of his scales into the water, but he didn't realize Bao was nearby. The scale burned Bao, leaving him scorched. Moving forward, Bao grew curious about Princess So. He asked Woosa about it, reminding him that when Susu was fading, he called her Princess So. But Woosa couldn't remember. The only faint memory he carried was of the heavenly palace, high above the clouds. And now, we finally dive into the dragon's past. The first serpent who transcended into a dragon, betrayed by the gods. We're at the heavenly palace. Princess So has been murdered. The dragon, in human form, arrives and hears the news. He rushes inside, sees her body sealed in a coffin. Rage consumes him. He demands to know who killed his lover. Because yes, Princess So loved him back. The figure guarding the coffin explains, rebels opposed to King Mo's, ruler of the heavens, ambushed the palace. Princess So tried to stop them and died in the process. The dragon was shattered. He regretted not staying by her side, swore vengeance on all responsible. But then came a glimmer of hope. The figure explained her death wasn't the end. As long as her soul lived, she could return to her body. The rebels tried to destroy her soul too, but King Mo's intervened. Furious, he sent her soul to the land below for safety and sealed her body with a barrier no one could cross. Only the dragon could break that seal. Only he could resurrect her. But to do so, he must pass the gods' trials. The dragon swore he would. Now shift back to Susu, the vessel of Princess So. She just witnessed this past. Dalcha's treatment was working, stabilizing her. Her father, Chosi, entered, asking if she truly had to continue this path. Susu answered firmly, there's no other way. Just as Dalcha said, she and Woosa are humanity's hope. Hearing this, Chosi gave her a gift, a box containing light armor crafted for her. Susu's eyes lit up. She'd always wanted armor like this. She changed her hairstyle, donned the armor, and looked incredible, radiating strength. Meanwhile, Woosa and Bao were busy in the mountains, setting up bells strung with colorful threads, preparing for what's to come. Dalcha spent the entire night working, devising a way to enter the land of the dead. Woosa wasn't buying it. He doubted there was even a way to enter the land of the dead. But then Dalcha showed up with Susu at his side. And of course, Susu wasted no time teasing him. She heard he went through hell because of her, and our boy brushed it off like it was nothing, conveniently forgetting how his ass got smacked raw by those guards, lol. Susu thanked him sincerely for bringing the herbs, and Woosa blushed hard. Yeah, her new hairstyle hit him differently. Dalcha cut the moment short, reminding them time was running out. Bao thought he'd be joining Woosa, but his face dropped when Dalcha told him he'd be staying behind to guard the place. Ordinary people can't cross into the land of the dead. Dalcha ordered Bao to fetch water, while Woosa tried to convince Susu to stay too. But Dalcha shut that down. Who else would calm Woosa if he lost control? Susu was coming, no matter what. Dalcha urged Woosa to grab the scale quickly, since he couldn't hold the gate open forever. He began the ritual, tossing talismans that ignited into magic, tearing open a doorway to the land of the dead. Woosa stared, half convinced Dalchu wasn't even human. This monk could do everything. Dalchu warned him. The gate would close in 3 to 4 hours. He had to return before then, and protect Susu while inside. They stepped through. The land of the dead was empty. A barren wasteland, lifeless, disappointing but fitting for its name. And then Cian appeared. No need to hunt Woosa down, he came straight to him. Woosa mocked Cian's new look, pointing out his white hair and pale skin, joking that the pain must have been brutal. But hey, the power of the scale makes it worth it, right? Well, Woosa was about to learn that lesson firsthand. The fight was on. Woosa told Susu to step back and watch. Cian summoned a fraction of the lion spirit's power, while Woosa conjured a fraction of the dragon spirit within him. They lunged. Cian's attack was ranged, unleashing energy shaped into a Yacha spirit infused with lion power. Woosa countered, channeling dragon energy into his arms, blasting it forward like a Kamehameha. The two forces collided, clashing violently, each trying to overwhelm the other. Once both energies collapsed into nothingness, Cian didn't waste a second. He was already on the move. He shifted into his Yacha form and dove from above, trying to catch our boy off guard. But Woosa's reflexes saved him. He dodged the sneak attack. Cian followed up instantly, unleashing a rapid strike that forced Woosa to block. Woosa conjured his scale sword, ready to counter. Cian smirked, acting cocky, mocking him, claiming it was a waste to use such power against someone like Woosa. Our boy dodged the next blow, slipped behind Cian, and went for the stab. But Cian reacted fast, raising his arm to block. And the shocker. Unlike before, the sword didn't pierce his skin at all. Cian's body had grown resistant to the scale. Woosa was slammed into the ground, crushed under the counter. Cian didn't let up. He pressed forward, giving Woosa no time to breathe. Outside, Dalcha sat before an orb of energy, explaining to Bao that this orb reflected Woosa's state. If it turned red, it meant Woosa was in danger. In other words, Woosa had to return before that orb shifted color. But things got worse. Il Kwang appeared. Dalcha was stunned to see him alive. Rumors said Kwang had fallen, but the truth was uglier. He had become filth. Dalcha saw his corrupted form clearly. Kwang offered a deal. He'd leave quietly if Dalcha revealed the location of the other dragon scales. Dalcha knew, but refused to tell this monster. The tension snapped. Kwang unleashed his energy, Dalcha answered in kind, and a new fight was about to erupt. Back inside the land of the dead, Woosa struggled to understand why his sword had no effect. The answer was simple. Cian's body had adapted, building resistance to the scale. And Cian was done playing around. He finally decided to unleash the lion spirit's power for real. Cian wove a thread out of pure lion spirit energy and lashed it at our boy. Woosa dodged the first strike, but Cian was relentless. Another lightning-fast follow-up came, and this time Woosa barely escaped. He couldn't wrap his head around Cian's speed. As he focused on evading, Susu shouted a warning, but it was too late. The thread caught him. Cian slammed him into the ground, making it clear. Woosa would never win unless he tapped into his serpent power. Now let's clear this up. You're probably thinking, wait, isn't Woosa carrying a dragon spirit? Yes, but remember the origin story. The serpent ascended into a dragon, and that serpent is what resides inside Woosa. So technically, he carries the dragon spirit, but its roots are serpent. That's why Cian keeps pressing him to unleash it. Cian struck again, whipping the thread, and Woosa tried to block with his scale sword. But he quickly realized it wasn't enough. Meanwhile, outside, Dalcha was locked in his own battle. At first, he was winning the energy clash against Kwang. Without his monster form, Kwang was nothing. But realizing defeat was near, Kwang unleashed his corrupted form, amplifying his energy. The tide turned, Dalcha lost the clash. Kwang then targeted Bao with poisonous tentacles, but Dalcha shoved Bao aside, taking the hit himself. Back inside, Woosa was overwhelmed. He couldn't dodge Cian's energy anymore. Cian summoned the shadow of the lion spirit, smashing Woosa into the ground again. Susu cried out, urging him to rise, insisting he couldn't lose here. But the lion energy was already burning his body. Cian had wrapped it around him, forcing the heat deeper, trying to make Woosa expel the dragon scale. Woosa struggled, trying to stand, but Cian tightened his grip, intensifying the burn. The plan was clear: break him, force the scale out. But the problem, even if Woosa wanted to, he didn't know how to release it. And then Cian escalated. He unleashed a beam of energy, infused with both lion spirit power and the Death Lord's energy. Determined not to fall, Woosa summoned his scale swords, bracing himself to block the incoming blast. Our boy was holding on barely, but somehow he blocked that massive energy ball. The pressure was so intense that his dragon form surfaced, scales shimmering as the spirit inside him roared awake. Cian came charging again, manifesting the lion spirit's paw to crush him. This time, Woosa took things seriously. He conjured scales to counter, declaring that all scales ultimately center around the serpent's scale, the one destined to ascend into a dragon. Among all 9 scales, the serpent's is the strongest. The clash was brutal. Dragon spirit against lion spirit, their energies colliding in a storm of destruction. The explosion that followed was massive, shaking the land of the dead itself. When the dust cleared, the lion spirit was shattered, destroyed. Meanwhile, outside, Dalchu was locked in his own desperate fight. Bao tried to jump in, but Dalchu shouted him down. If Bao interfered, he'd die instantly. Kwang pressed Dalchu, demanding the location of the other scales. Dalchu resisted, even as poison coursed through his veins. But Kwang stabbed him again, injecting more venom. The poison took hold, and Dalchu began muttering, black attire and rosary. That was the clue. Someone dressed in black with a rosary possessed one of the dragon's scales. Kwang recognized the description. To him, that meant victory. Back in the main fight, serpent scales floated across the battlefield, circling like predators. Cian was stunned, his lion spirit destroyed by what he called a delicate thing. But Woosa wasn't done. He prepared to absorb the lion spirit into his body. Cian tried to resist, but the serpent's scales were already surrounding him. Woosa unleashed his technique, scales bursting with energy, immobilizing Cian completely. Now it was payback. Our boy tightened his grip, crushing Cian's body, burning him down just like Cian had tried to do earlier. Determined, Woosa forced the pressure higher and higher, intent on making Cian spit out the lion spirit scale. Once more, Woosa lost control. This time the dragon fully took over. Cian was lifted into the sky, helpless, as the dragon forced the lion's spirit out of his body. The moment the scale appeared, the dragon absorbed it, fusing the power inside Woosa. But his body couldn't handle it. The pain was unbearable, his flesh burning, his form trembling on the edge of transforming into a monster again. Dalchu was fading fast. Poison coursed through him, his body failing. He knew his time had come. There was no surviving this. With what strength remained, he called Bao to his side. He told him to listen carefully, because Bao had to take his place and guide Woosa. There was no time for explanations. Dalchu ordered Bao to turn around, and when he did, the monk performed a final technique. All his knowledge, everything he had learned, was transferred into Bao. The pain was immense, Bao screamed, but Dalchu told him this pain would forge him stronger. When the transfer ended, Dalchu collapsed. The old monk died right there. A true W monk, gone but unforgettable. Rest in peace. Back with Woosa, the dragon's grip was tightening, but Susu stepped in. Her hair wrapped around him, pulling him back from the brink, restoring his humanity. When they returned, the scene was chaos. Woosa's eyes fell on Bao, kneeling beside Dalchu's lifeless body, tears streaming. At first, Woosa thought the monk was just resting, but Bao explained he was gone. The realization hit hard. Woosa broke down, unable to hold back his tears. Susu too began crying. It was a heartbreaking moment, the loss of their mentor heavy on them all. Back in the land of the dead, Cian rose to his feet, broken and defeated. He couldn't bear the shame of facing the Death Lord, yet regret weighed heavy as he dragged himself forward. Meanwhile, Woosa and the party returned to Susu's home. With a heavy heart, Woosa told Chosi about Dalchu's death. He asked for a favor. Since they couldn't give their master a proper burial, could Chosi handle it? Chosi promised he would, assuring Woosa that Dalchu would be given a proper send-off. Days passed. Our boy sat in silence, lost in thought, replaying everything that had happened. Susu visited him often, frustrated but caring. She was relieved that despite Woosa now carrying 2 scales, there were no side effects, at least for now. Still, she urged him to move quickly, to seek out the remaining scales. Woosa agreed in spirit, but after Dalchu's death, no one knew where to begin. Bao then revealed what Dalchu had done for him, passing on all his knowledge before dying. Woosa told Susu they'd move once Bao returned. Bao had been training non-stop, deep in the mountains, fasting, meditating, pushing himself to open the inner eyes. Once opened, He'd be able to see everything. Shift to Noctu office. Magistrate Park received grim news. Headless corpses had been found in Siam village. Witnesses claimed a monster was devouring only people's heads. Park ordered his guards to summon Woosa immediately. At Siam village, crowds gathered around the victims. Strangely, every person killed was Catholic, hiding in the mountains to avoid arrest. Among the villagers stood a boy in black attire, clutching a rosary. This was the one Dalchu had mentioned to Kwang before his death. The boy knew the truth. The scale hidden inside his rosary was the reason everyone around him died. When he heard there were still people in the mountains, he dashed off to warn them. But as he ran, a sound echoed from the trees. Kwang appeared. The villagers called this boy the Western Ghost, claiming he was possessed by a spirit from abroad. Kwang confronted him, asking about the scale. The moment the boy heard that word, scale, he froze in shock. The kid bolted, but Kwang was faster. He caught him, wrapping those vile tentacles around the boy's neck, trying to squeeze the truth out. The Western Ghost refused to reveal the scale's locations, instead warning about their danger, how they'd already killed countless people. But Kwang, greedy filth that he is, didn't care. He tightened his grip, forcing harder. That's when the rosary glowed. The scales inside it surged, stunning Kwang. A wave of energy erupted from the boy, forming a temple of light that could be seen from miles away. The Western Ghost wasn't carrying just one scale. He had 3, hidden within that rosary. Deep in the mountains, the monster feasting on human flesh noticed the temple's energy. He recognized it instantly. These were the energies of the scales. Woosa and Susu saw it too, the temple rising into the sky. Susu wanted to wait for Bao, but Woosa knew his friend would catch up once his training was complete. So they pressed forward toward Siam village. Back at the scene, even after unleashing that surge, the kid was beaten down again by Kwang. Tentacles wrapped around his arm, aiming to sever it and steal the rosary. But the arm held firm. The 3 scales protected him. Kwang shifted focus, realizing the truth. The rosary itself contained the 3 scales. Rage filled the kid. He knew how dangerous they were, and he wasn't about to let them slip away. Kwang launched a powerful strike, but suddenly, the flesh-eating monster appeared, blocking the attack. Don't mistake this for heroism. A monster is always a monster. This was the same beast responsible for the headless corpses in the mountains. And here's another revelation. This monster carried 3 scales of his own. Now the battlefield held 6 scales between the ghost and the monster, plus the 2 Woosa carried, 8 in total. Only 1 scale remained unclaimed. The monster wasted no time. He ripped Kwang's tentacles apart, slamming him into the ground. The Western Ghost tried to flee, but he was too slow. The monster tore something from his body and hurled it like a ranged weapon, stopping the boy in his tracks. The kid and the monster traded barbs, mocking each other. One boasting that he carried scales yet remained human, the other embracing his filthy rampage as a monster. Twisted ideals, but oddly, there was a shred of respect between them. LOL, even though being a monster is obviously bad, they both stood firm in their own paths. The Western Ghost, exhausted and knowing he couldn't win, gave up. He told the monster to take the scales. But the monster wasn't satisfied. He wanted a fight, not surrender. When he turned his back, Kwang saw his chance. True to his backstabbing nature, he struck from behind, stabbing the monster and injecting his poison. But this wasn't like the others. The monster carried 3 scales, and the poison had no effect. He ripped Kwang's tentacles apart with ease. Then the monster shifted, twisting his form into that of a cow. Though with horns, he looked more like a bull. Still, one of the spirits he carried was a cow spirit, so that's what he became. He charged, slamming into Kwang and sending him flying. When Kwang hit the ground, the monster followed with a crushing smash, burying him beneath the earth. Next, the monster turned his fury on the kid. The Western Ghost tried to block, and his rosary glowed, stunning the monster for a moment. But the scales inside were surging, threatening to overwhelm him. Once more, it looked like the kid was about to lose control. Meanwhile, Bao had completed half his training. Deep in the forest, he saw the surge of scale energy rising before him. He knew instantly, if all the scales were gathered here, then Woosa was in danger. The kid's rosary dimmed after its glow, and he bolted through the forest, desperate to put distance between himself and the monster. But this beast wasn't about to let him slip away. From its back, it conjured the nose of a pig. Yup, you heard right. The second spirit it carried was a pig spirit. Combined with the raw speed of the cow spirit, the monster sniffed the air, tracking the boy's every move. Shift to the kid, frustration boiling inside him. After all this time, he still feared death. And here's where we dive into his past. Once, he'd had enough of the three spirits tormenting him. He begged someone to cut off his arm, to free him. That someone raised an axe, but the moment it touched his arm, the axe shattered. And that person? None other than Monk Dalchu. Turns out, the Western ghost was Dalchu's student long before Woosa ever was. Back then, Dalchu told him plainly, the only way to escape the pain was to master the scale, to become its true owner. Back to the present. Kwang, that filthy traitor, somehow survived all the punishment. On his path, he crossed Woosa and Susu. Woosa, burning with rage, knew this was the one who killed his master. Revenge was all he wanted. He conjured a scale sword, ready to end it. Kwang dashed forward, but then an arrow struck him. A magic bow. Bao had arrived, the student entrusted with Dalchu's legacy. Kwang's body twisted under the arrow's power. Bao wasn't holding back. He performed a ritual, the Bao's magic exploding inside Kwang, tearing his body apart and sending his soul straight into the land of the dead. Finally, this filth was gone. After countless chapters of scheming, Kwang was dead. Bao turned to Woosa, informing him that all the dragon scales had gathered here in this mountain. The mission was nearly complete. Only one scale remained, and with it, the fate of the world hung in balance. Susu looked at Bao and asked straight up if he'd finished his training. Bao admitted he wrapped up the essentials, but the rest? That can't be done alone, it has to be forged in real battle. Susu smirked, teasing him about how much he's changed, how he's become way more reliable than before. Bao then turned to Woosa and dropped the story of the Western ghost. Dalchu had chosen that kid to gather the scales even before Woosa was in the picture. Back then, the ghost was in the perfect environment to collect them. Woosa couldn't believe it. Someone else out there with that kind of destiny? Unlike Woosa's insane potential, the Western ghost had a weak will. Still, if that kid had shown courage, nobody could have stopped him. His body was naturally more suited for the scales than Woosa's. Woosa brushed it all off, boasting about his dragon spirit, the strongest of them all. But let me tell you, that's not the full truth, and you'll see why soon enough. Meanwhile, the monster finally tracked down the Western ghost, who had been hiding away. The kid wasn't just sitting around, though. He was meditating, reflecting on Dalchu's teachings, and mastering some of his scale abilities. To prove it, he focused energy into his arm and blasted it forward like a Kamehameha. The force ripped through multiple walls, clearing a path, but that path also exposed him to the monster. The monster lit up with excitement. Finally, the kid had some technique, which meant he could unleash real power. The kid, now confident with his new mastery, looked sharper than ever. As the monster charged, the kid fired his Kamehameha straight at him. But the monster blocked it with ease, unimpressed. He expected more. Then came the counter. The monster smacked the boy hard, sending him crashing into the ground. Bruised and shaken, the kid thought about what the monster had said. The scale's true power only comes when you embrace being a monster. So he did. He accepted it. The scales reacted violently, twisting his body, reshaping him. And then wings burst out from his back. A new form was born. The spirits inside that kid really showed mercy. He didn't fully turn into a monster. LOL, even the monster himself had to admit, you look a little too cute to be a monster. But at the end of the day, a monster is still a monster. The monster then yanked out his own horns, using them as weapons. That's when we learned another secret. One of the spirits inside the kid is a hawk. As the monster swung, the kid used his wings to block the attack. The monster kept pressing, taunting him to unleash his grudge, to embrace being a true monster so he could wield full power. But the kid stayed defensive, thinking hard about those words. He called out to the spirit within, begging for more strength. Energy gathered in his hands, forming into a glowing ball. He hurled it at the monster. The monster blocked the first blast, but the kid immediately charged another and fired again. This time, the monster coated his fist in energy and smashed it head-on. Both forces collided and collapsed in a violent burst. Now the monster was thrilled. Finally, a fight worth having. He knew if he slipped even once, he'd be the one devoured. He lunged again, horns ready to pierce, but suddenly a magic arrow shot through the air, halting the clash. The monster thought Dalchu had intervened, but no, it was Dalchu's disciple. And just like that, our party stepped onto the battlefield. The kid recognized Woosa instantly. Dalcha had spoken of him before. And with that knowledge, the kid's ambition flared. He wanted the scales inside Woosa, thinking it would be easy to take them. Now the battlefield is boiling. 8 scales already unleashed, only one missing to complete the set. The tension is insane, with all 3 of them barking back and forth, each itching to tear the other apart. Bao though knows his role. His mission is to be the bridge, the one who connects them back to reason. He explained to Susu that one scale is still missing, and the only way to awaken it is for the other 8 to unite. Only then will the dragon scales truly become one. Bao began the ritual, but Susu wouldn't stop pressing him, demanding to know where the final scale was hiding. Bao kept his calm, telling her she'll find out once the 8 scales gather together. Meanwhile, the kid and Woosa started talking, deliberately leaving the monster out of the conversation. That ticked the monster off big time. The kid finally pieced together Dalcha's words. Being master of the scales wasn't about enduring pain, it was about saving everyone who carried pain. Holding even one scale makes people greedy for the rest. And sure enough, greed took over. The kid wanted Woosa's scales for himself. He dashed forward, launching an attack, but Woosa countered. The monster, furious at being ignored, stormed in and smashed both of them, breaking up their fight. His decision was clear: take Woosa down first. Woosa knew this wasn't the time to hold back. He transformed into his dragon form, bracing for the clash. The monster gathered energy into his fist, slammed it into the ground, and hurled a massive ball of solid rock straight at him. The ground shook as that massive ball of rock smashed down, tearing the battlefield apart. But our boy wasn't about to get crushed. Woosa leapt high, dodging clean, and countered with his own surge of energy. The monster was already braced, though, ready for the clash. Their powers collided, collapsing into each other, forcing Woosa to retreat a step. The monster didn't let up. He dashed in for a follow-up strike, but Woosa's speed kept him safe, slipping past each blow. Then the monster decided it was time to unleash his strongest spirit, the tiger spirit. That's when the kid realized something crucial. One spirit was missing. There are 9 in total. The kid carried hawk, deer, and camel. Woosa had serpent and lion. The monster wielded cow, pig, and tiger. The only one left was the carp. Bao, deep in meditation, was preparing for the ritual. He told Susu that only she knew the answer to when the carp spirit would awaken. Susu froze, stunned. "What do you mean?" she demanded. Turns out, the carp scale had been inside Susu all along. Now the full plot unraveled. Back in the heavens, during the rebellion, Princess So was killed by the rebel army. They tried to destroy both her body and her soul. Her body was hidden deep in the heavens, but her soul descended to earth to escape, finding refuge inside Susu. Meanwhile, Li Mugi, the dragon of our story, was trying to ascend by gathering all 9 spirits. But the rebel army stopped him. In desperation, he burned himself. The carp's scale fell to earth with the others, merging with Susu to protect Princess So's soul. That's why the carp spirit is the strongest of them all. Only when it awakens will the 9 scales unite. And that's the burden Susu has been carrying. Bao was preparing to release Princess So from Susu's body, suspecting she might know how to guide them through this chaos. Back in the fight, the monster hurled his energy shaped like a spirit. Woosa countered with his scales, while the kid charged his own attack to join in. Woosa, wielding the dragon spirit, the master of all spirits, unleashed even more power, trying to force both the kid and the monster to spit out their spirits. The battlefield hit its peak. Once the kid stepped in, Woosa halted his attack, letting the monster's energy collide with the kid's. The kid had enough of this back and forth and threw down the challenge. Let's end it with the next strike. All 3 charged up, pouring everything they had into one final clash. Woosa summoned the dragon spirit, the monster unleashed the tiger, and the kid called upon the hawk. Their energies roared together, colliding in a storm that shook the ground. But then something wild happened. Their powers didn't just cancel out, they started merging into one. Susu reacted instantly, her body resonating with the scales. Bao, locked in meditation, released the ritual. The moment he did, Susu rose into the air, absorbing the combined energy of all the scales. The surge was overwhelming, and when it reached its peak, Princess So resurfaced, taking control. Now the battlefield belonged to her. Princess So intensified the energy even further, unleashing the carp spirit hidden inside Susu all along. With her technique, she struck at all 3, Woosa, the monster, and the kid. And just like that, the tide turned. The one dominating the battlefield was no longer the dragon, the tiger, or the hawk. It was Princess So. So was no joke. Her power was overwhelming. Even the rosary wrapped around the kid's arm shattered, proof of just how terrifying her strength was. And she wasn't stopping there. So began absorbing every ounce of spirit energy from the three of them, their bodies burning under the pressure. Bao shouted to Woosa, warning him, "Give up the scales to her or be reduced to ashes." And here's where greed reared its head again. Woosa wanted to keep them, to collect all the scales for himself. But Bao reminded him of the truth. Their mission was never about hoarding power. It was about restoring the dragon and returning balance, not chasing absolute dominance. Who held the scales didn't matter. What mattered was uniting them. That reminder snapped Woosa out of his greed. He realized the danger, so would burn anyone who refused to release their spirit. The monster resisted, refusing to yield. The kid, too, clung to his scales. So saw their defiance and intensified her technique, burning their bodies faster, pushing them closer to annihilation. Woosa turned to Bao, desperate, asking how to release the scales. Bao told him to trust So completely and throw everything in. Woosa focused his energy, surrendering control, and let So take the rest. She absorbed the scales from his body, and once she had them, her technique grew even more brutal. The monster and the kid couldn't withstand it. They were burned into ashes, erased from existence. Then came the explosion. When the dust cleared, So had acquired all 9 spirits. Princess So transformed into a dragon, soaring into the sky. The mission was complete. The dragon reclaimed what was rightfully his. Susu, thankfully, survived the ordeal. And with that, both the dragon and Princess So ascended to the heavens. Thus, my friends, this epic tale reached its end.